Orientals have been making knives since, you could say, before we were civilized. 700-800 years. We're pretty new at making knives. We're not Vikings. They were making knives for a very long time also. Damascus steel, laminated steels was originated in the Orient. It's a lot stronger edge and a lot easier to take care of. Now you're starting to see Oriental style knives coming up through, the home cook, the chef, the student. Everybody's starting to use them. It's just a totally different feel in your hand. It's just a very keen edge, different cuts. You take a typical knife that we're used to, and you look at the back side of it. If you were to try to cut very thin slices in something, it's almost like a wedge shape. It's almost like a cleaver, okay, unless you pull that edge back. Asian style knives, that edge is thin all the way back to the spline. So even when this knife wears down to here, it's still very thin. Where in German style cutlery, you see the bolster, 8 years from now, that knife's going to be very thick. When we get into these knives right here, these are called sushi knives. And these are used to cut fish very, very thinly. Knives up here, this is a slicer. Oriental style, a slicer like this, slicers like these, would be a beginner's sushi knife. It would be a sushi knife that a beginner learning to make sushi would use until they learned how to use something like this. Typically, a knife like this is carbon steel, inner core carbon, wrapped with carbon steel. Very, very thick spline in the back, and it's what they call hollow ground in the back. So when you sharpen this knife, this is your angle. You can just, it'll take the angle right just like that. To deburr a knife like this, you'd actually lay it down and draw it away from you. It's going to hit this point and this point. It'll never hit the center. It's what they call hollow ground. It's cupped. Extremely, extremely sharp. You get extremely thin slices, and that cup in the back causes what we're starting to get into are Granton edges. It breaks that suction barrier. The things won't stick to the blade, it'll just float right through the fish. A Granton edge is hollows cut out of the face of the knife. And what that does is as you're slicing products thinly, meat thinly, it breaks that suction barrier. Things won't tend to stick to the blade. It takes a little bit of fatigue off your wrist, where your wrist sometimes slips when you're slicing a roast. This will just break that suction barrier, and then you get thinner slices. This knife here is designed by a chef that went through culinary school, graduated, was in the industry for about 10 years. He started getting carpal tunnel syndrome. So he designed a knife whose blade would come up and then drop down to take the fatigue off your wrist. And this is a new knife that just came out on the market about 2 months ago. Outside the norm would be knives. A lot of the companies are coming out with what they call offset knives. They're bread knives, but they cut an angle in. This is typically your bread knife that we all know. But what this does is takes your knuckles off the board. So you could actually slice without working off the table. Okay, this hits, and this is angled, so you can actually work right on the table. It's great for onions, tomatoes, bread. And what they did is they reversed the serrations. Typically on this bread knife, the serrations are hewed, cut in. So actually what you do is these teeth, you cut through encrusted bread, and this is where you're slicing. I call this an oyster serration. It's like an oyster shell. It's reversed. So you're actually cutting right on contact. So these are also great for meats, salami. There's other specialty knives. They're not real specialty to people in the field, but tournée knives, the curved, they're used as a paring knife, but in school, in industrial fields, what they'll do is they'll do a 7-sided potato. What this does is just takes the curve. I like it, it's great just peeling potatoes, anything with a radius. Very comfortable knife. Edge on both sides. There's an edge on both sides of this knife. Also, they have knives coming out now. This is a new knife by Wusthof. and it's for Parmesan cheese, for breaking Parmesan cheese. We're used to just a regular wedge shape, but now you see a lot of companies coming out with this. This knife right here is ceramic. Okay, as far as knife material goes, this doesn't react with any acidic foods. With your kikuichis, the inner core carbon steel sometimes reacts with acidic foods, will discolor it. Sabatier knives that are full carbon steel, acidic foods will react to the steel. This is made out of the same material they make the cubic zirconia diamond out of. It's the hardness of a diamond. Downside of these knives, they will get little tiny chips in the edge, but the edge will last up to 5 years. They are a lot more durable than people give them credit for. They think if you drop it, it's going to break right in half, but it's a very durable knife. You cannot sharpen them. It's the hardness of a diamond. So you have to send them back to the company to get them sharpened. And downside too is you're without a knife for 2 weeks. In industry use, I don't recommend them. If they are going to use it in the industry, just a specialty knife. You know, maybe do some juliennes with it, stuff like that. It's not a workhorse knife like your chef's knife, you know, like these guys. These are meant to be used all day, and this knife just won't take it. It just can't. Well, cleavers, these guys are vegetable. Okay, there's meat cleaver, which are these guys here, and a good way to distinguish a meat cleaver from a vegetable cleaver is meat cleaver is always going to have a hole in it, and that's what they used to hang the knife from in packing houses, meat fab places. Typically, your vegetable cleaver, a lot wider blade, a lot thinner. This is used for breaking apart meat. It's not used for breaking bone. A lot of people think they can take this and crack through a bone. The only thing this is going to do to a bone is shatter it, and you're going to have bone particles in your meat. It's used for breaking joints and breaking down beef. Vegetable cleavers is, you know, dicing, chopping, mincing. Same thing as a chef's knife would be, but a little bit finer cuts. It's a lot thinner. It's nice to scoop things up, you know, break garlic up. Just very user-friendly knife. Asian style, there's people that would actually use this and break down a chicken with it. You know, so it's preference and it's style of cooking. You know, not to get confused with the meat cleaver, because the edge will roll on these because it's so thin. I've actually seen Martin Yen take a pepper and actually hold it right here and just roll it across the table and devein the pepper, the seeds come out. It's incredible. The current trends going on with knives right now are a lot of companies are getting into stainless steel knives. Global started with this line of knives, all stainless steel. You know, all stainless steel handle, all one piece. Very cleanly, it's very easy to clean. There's no nicks, crevices to get anything caught into. Company Chroma is making a knife that's all stainless now. This is actually designed by Porsche, the car company. Wusthof, Henkel, they're all coming out with stainless knives. This is a Henkel knife, a Santoku, all stainless. This is a Wusthof, all stainless. You get into stainless knives, depending on company, they're either heavier or they're a lot lighter. Global makes a very light stainless steel knife. Wusthof, Henkel with the handle, it's extremely heavy. So again, it all comes down to preference and how it feels in your hand. The different handle designs you'll see here, rounded, flared out. These are ergonomically shaped. These are supposed to take fatigue off your wrist, okay? Just like the knife that was designed by Ergo Chef. The handle on the Chroma knife is flared out, so when it's in your hand, slippage, it's a lot thinner here than it is here, so when you hold the knife properly over top of the blade, it's not going to slip out of your hand. Same holds true with the Global knife. It's flared out on the bottom, so when you hold it, because it is stainless steel, they do tend to be slippery, it's not going to slip out of your hand. And the same with the molded handle on the Henkel and the Wusthof. There's a little curve, which takes fatigue off your wrist, but also for slippage. Well, holding knives for chefs, they're particular the way they hold it, the way they were first taught how to hold it. Typically, you want to be over top of your knife. If I were going to do slices like this, I wouldn't necessarily be over top of the knife. I'd bring my hand back a little bit further to use the tip. As a chef is, their preference. When I'm trying to talk to mom and dad that come in to buy a knife, I show them over top. You have no control of a chef's knife back here. That's, you know, you go to dice, your knuckles hit. When you come up here, finger behind the bolster, you know, keeps your knuckles off the table. You hold a knife like this, it just doesn't work. Well, holding different knives, there's going to be a different grip. Chef knife, because you're dicing, you're chopping, you're mincing. You want to be over top of the knife for accuracy. Slicers, no, there's no reason to hold them up here. You can actually hold the handle and get nice slices. You know, depending on what type of meat you're doing, you can just draw the knife right through or use a saw action. So it's not that necessary to hold over top. That's more of your dicing, chopping motion. Wear and tear on knives, you can tell when people come in, if there's dips right below the bolster, you know they've been using an electric sharpener, or they've been hitting their butcher steel and they haven't reshaped their knife. You can see bent tips that people broke apart some ice cream or frozen food. But a lot of your knives that are fully forged, it's a very hard steel. So in a kitchen atmosphere, if you drop it on a quarry tile floor, it's apt to break right in half because it's very hard. And that's why the companies give a guarantee on their product. If they see that and it's a clean break, it's typically replaced. Prices of knives vary. You look at good quality knives, the price can range, for instance, for an 8-inch chef's knife, anywhere from $60, $40, up to $200. You can buy less expensive ones for $8, $10, but that's exactly what you did. You bought an $8 or $10 knife. The edge retention isn't going to be the same. The feel of it's not going to be the same. The steel won't be the same. They'll end up either rusting or the edges will turn, or you're not going to be able to keep them sharp. The Kulinar. Have you ever held a chroma paring knife?
No.
There's a company, Chroma. It was designed by F.A. Porsche, the car company. What they did is they flared the handle out a little bit. There's little knobs which hold on to. It's a very comfortable knife. Very good steel.
How easy to sharpen? How easy to keep the edge?
They recommend with that knife, no use for a butcher steel, 800 grit water stone. You know, you have a 5,000, everything less than that?
I think it's 1,000 on the other side.
1,000 would be perfect. Yeah, this is a company, Kikuichi. So inner core is carbon steel wrapped with stainless. I think we do have, you could have got a Santuco like this. This is a Yasuba, would be shaped like that with this handle.